All right, so I'm going to be talking about the Odyssey today, mainly this one scene in particular. If you're wondering what the scene is, I'll go into a lot of details about that, but I just want to start by saying this is a video that will contain spoilers. It will talk a lot about the conclusion and a few of the things that happen throughout the film. So if you have not seen the movie, you have been warned. Again, spoiler alert. I want to start by saying this movie, for my first impressions, I did enjoy it. It's not necessarily my favorite Nolan film. I do think Inception is still the highest one, which, I mean, come on, it's Inception. It's a hard kind of film to beat. But I have seen The Odyssey twice. I went on a Thursday night and then I went again on a Friday to see it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. At first, I gave it a 4.5 on my Letterboxd, and then I went back and gave it a 5. So I do think it is worth watching. It was a film that I was so eager to see just because I am a fan of Greek mythology, a little bit of Greek history, and the Odyssey was something that I was very fond of as a child. And when I heard that Nolan was doing it, I was skeptical, not because he is a bad filmmaker. I mean, he's one of the best filmmakers of our time. It's just because this is a book that, an epic, that when you try to adapt it, you're not going to make everyone happy. Everyone's going to have an opinion. I mean, we've seen the people talk about historical accuracies. Fucking people are mad because Lapita is cast as Helen of Troy, whether it's a race reason or a looks reason. You have people mad that Elliot Page is playing Sinon, where they were confused for playing Achilles. There's a lot of different reasons why people were upset. And I think Nolan, I want to give him credit. I think he did a great job at finding the right balance. I do think the cast kind of helped with that. You know, they did a lot of heavy lifting to bring in those fans who, even if you aren't familiar with the story, you know, hey, Zendaya's in it, I'm gonna go watch it because Zendaya. Tom Holland, you got Spider-Man coming, hey, I'm about to go watch it for that. So I do think he was able to find a great balance. Now for the scene I'll be discussing, it involves Odysseus and Athena. This scene comes in the later second half of the film, where Odysseus has already returned to Ithaca. He has already had a little bit of communications with the people of Ithaca. He kind of sees how the suitors are acting, how they treat beggars, how they treat each other, and especially how they treat his family. I mean, how they treat Telemachus and Penelope. But at this time, he is under this disguise as he's a beggar, and he is called to talk to Penelope while she can't see him. Like, they're facing away from each other. There's a screen, and they're having this discussion. And we learn from Odysseus that one of the major reasons why he didn't want to come back to Ithaca, why? Because we talk about it so much in the film. In the film, there's this idea of like, you don't want to return home, do you? Like, why do you not want to return home? And he is asked this question a lot by Calypso when on there. And I mean, it's brought up multiple times throughout the film that there's something in you. Like, if you wanted to be home, you would have made it. And we learn at this point through this conversation, which I think is one of the best films. I mean, I think this is one of the best scenes in the film. I'm sorry, but I think this is one of the best scenes of Nolan's career up until this point, because while people are going to have their own reservations about why this theme was brought, you know, it wasn't necessarily a part of the original Odyssey, the actual epic by Homer. I do think it does something very special. So in this scene, Odysseus talks to Penelope, and he reveals how he knew Odysseus, who, even though he's the beggar and he knows himself, he's like, hey, um, you know, what if I told you the reason why he didn't return was because he was afraid of what home had become? What if I told you that the person he was when he left is not the person he would be when he came back? And he keeps asking these questions, questions that have been brought up throughout the duration of the film. You start to realize that, hey, all these things that were brought in the first half, which a lot of people I see are calling very exposition heavy, which it is. I mean, I won't be biased. The first half of the film definitely is just kind of setting the guideline. I mean, the premise, but it's really setting it for these questions to be asked later, so Odysseus can work through and ask it. Which is also, I think, you know, Nolan loves his non-linear timelines, and I do see why some people might be upset, but I think it works perfectly for this type of execution. And while talking to Penelope, he's kind of working through these questions, and he's answering them while also asking them. He sees a vision of Athena. Athena comes and sits right next to him, played by Zendaya. And she doesn't say anything. She just watches as he starts to make this confessional of a sort. And in this scene, it is so powerful because while you see him talk to Penelope, but looking at Athena, you go back through time and you see these flashbacks of the actual Trojan War and how what they have defied was not just, you know, a treaty or, you know, the sacred law of war. They've done something more sacred. They've broken the sacred law of trust, of hospitality, which is known as Zeus's law in this film, and is brought up multiple times. Now, Zeus's law is known as pretty much treating others how you want to be treated. And while that's a very, very simple way of saying it, the whole point is hospitality. I know Telemachus brings up a bunch of times like, oh, be careful, that beggar might be a god. And then it's kind of funny because like thunder will come and you're like, oh shit, like the suitors are like, oh, it might be a god. But the whole thing is you treat people with hospitality. You don't break the sacred trust between religion, between people, between humanity. And in this case, the Odysseus is credited as the man who won them the Trojan War by entering Troy with the horse. Everyone knows the story. It's the premise of the Odyssey, which leads them to getting back home. And what's so important about this scene is the whole entire film hypes Odysseus up. Everyone's like, "Oh, your dad is so smart. He was one of the smartest. He was a great soldier, a great leader. He's the one that came up with this idea." And at this point in time, you're like, "Okay, like we get it. Like he's smart. We understand." Which is something that I think was brought up because one of the main things in the actual Odyssey, the epic, is how he is very like this sense of bravado. He's very prideful in his actions. So I do think it was nice that he did try to incorporate some of that elements by just letting it be a mouthpiece for other people to like keep telling him your dad was a really great leader. But at this point, when he's talking to blah blah, blah, I got distracted. I guess no, wrong. Go. When he's talking to Penelope and seeing Athena, he's starting to realize that he won them the war, but at what cost? He's the one who has broken Zeus's law. While he is this king of Ithaca, he's known for his hospitality, he's known for being a good person, for welcoming in people. There's a great part before this scene. Well, it happens in the scene, but one of the maids is washing his feet, and there's a callback to how she knew Odysseus and how he had got like bit by a boar, and she recognizes, oh my god, this is my king. But the important part is a line delivered by Anne Hathaway, how he says, it's okay, I don't need my feet washed. And she says, no, my husband always said that a slave or a beggar or anyone who comes into this house will have their feet washed. And that's the hospitality element that Odysseus has been so strong with conveying. And at this point, you start to realize that the Trojan War and the gift that they gave the Trojans has really defied Zeus's law and it has broken what is sacred. So, hospitality right now, as we understand, it's not just kindness. It's about a sacred contract made between people. Hosts are going to offer food and shelter. Protection will be given before just asking questions. And guests are respected while also giving generosity. The victory of Odysseus and his soldiers and King Agamemnon, it really just comes as deception. Once deception becomes acceptable, every sacred bond that held society together has been broken, and they are now being referred to as the people of the sea people. And there's this common thing where everyone's like, "Oh, there's something's coming, a war is coming." And while it's talked about like it's a war, I think the better idea was that it's not the war and that's coming. It's not this unknown force who's going to tear Ithaca down. They're going to destroy. No, what it is the breaking of Zeus's law, the breaking of the divine, the breaking of the sacred. And at this point in time, you realize that Odysseus is the sea people. He comes back and he is the person who started by breaking Zeus's law, and he has now brought it back home. And he comes home to see that his own humility is not being accepted the same way. The suitors, we see multiple scenes where they kick his dog, they toss his dog out, they attack beggars, they attack his own son. And you know, knowing that he is this king who is known for humility and hospitality, and he's the one to break this sacred vow of trust. And we get this whole thing of like, I defy the gods, I defy the gods. No, he did defy the gods, and we saw what the result was of him having to go through all these challenges to get home and losing his crew in the process. But while looking at Athena, he reaches out and they hold hands. And at this point, you see, and I want to really talk about this part. I know this video is kind of all over the place, so like fuck it. But I really want to talk about this part in the scene, which makes it so special. I've seen a lot of people like, oh no, like Zendaya's not Athena, she plays like a vision, or no, she's not Athena, she's just like the personification of this and that. And here's why I think it is, and here is what I've seen a common answer be. Zendaya plays the guise Athena, the guise of wisdom and strategy. So those are two main things you should remember. And that is these two traits that have been associated greatly with Odysseus. And at this point in time, when we go back through time and we see the siege of Troy after they've tore the walls down and penetrated, you see one of the people of Troy get grabbed by two of the soldiers, and they get ready to behead her. And at this point, you see that is Zendaya playing this character. She's playing this lady of Troy, and she begs, she pleads for her life. Please do not do this. And at the same time, when they cut her head off, someone cuts off the head of a statue, and the statue happens to be Athena. And you see both of them go back as the head rolls, and that is the pinnacle of this scene, the pinnacle of the film. They've defied the trust of the gods. They defied the trust of each other. And this is something that you see all throughout humanity. I mean, and I'll kind of get into that briefly about where I think he could have went a little different, but I don't want this to be like some super insane long video. I just kind of want to talk about this main scene. I believe that Athena, we already know, and if you don't know, in Greek mythology and most mythologies, gods and goddesses, deities, they can take the form of whatever they want. An animal, a beggar. I mean, they even reference this. They say, Tom Holland, Telemachus, he says multiple times, like, "Hey, this might be a god in disguise." You're saying it's a beggar, and people are like, "Oh, it doesn't smell like a god." No, it doesn't look like a god. He even says multiple fucking times, like, "You have the eyes of Athena. You have the eyes of Athena." And people, I've seen like the little jokes on like TikTok and social media and stuff where everyone's like, he keeps saying this, but this scene is so powerful, not just for the acting. And I'm hoping this is one of the scenes where Nolan had said that Zendaya was perfect, because I do think she was perfect at conveying this the lingering observation of someone who has had to see, like, knowing your guys' at the end, like, strategy, how you can see that strategy, yes, does mean you can win a war, but it doesn't necessarily mean how you win the war. And I think that's one of the important traits that was brought up in this film, with Athena as a goddess, but also as Odysseus as the character serving as this master strategist. And in this part, you realize that she isn't necessarily like the goddess at this point. She's Athena taking the personification of his guilt, yes, but is just serving as like, hey, you see, like, in the film, it's a weird way how they, like, it's hard to describe this edit. You have to watch the film, but they edit it back and forth, so you see that, like, at the same time this person's head was cut off, the statue of Athena was cut off. So at that point, the sacred contract between gods and humans have been broken. The same way that the trust between Troy and Ithaca has been broken in this exact moment, where the king of Ithaca has, like, came up with this master plan, and it's a gift, and you don't use a gift to break that, because you wouldn't want someone giving you a fucking gift like, hey, you wouldn't want me to give you $100 as a birthday gift, right? And then it turns out it's fucking counterfeit and you go to jail. Like, oh, that's fucked up. So that's one of the best parts about this scene. And I know, like, this is kind of all over the place, but I do think it was something that was so amazing watching it actually play out. And I noticed on the first time, but the second time just helped me settle and digest the scene a little bit more. And I thought it was something that was just a masterclass of filmmaking.